Every Minecraft player knows about ender pearls, but there's a ton of secret things to do with them you might not know, so in this video I'll show it all. Now the main way of obtaining ender pearls is from Enderman. This is not that difficult of a mob to find, but certainly getting a massive quantity of them is really only possible inside of the end dimension. And all you have to do to kill them is simply have a place like this where it's only 2 blocks tall, then you can hit and anger that Enderman as much as you possibly want to, and instead of sort of risking yourself getting hit by them, you can simply hide inside of here, and then very easily be able to hit them without them being able to hit you back. And of course that would make the best way of getting ender pearls be an Enderman farm. However, if you do not want to get your ender pearls this way, there is another method. The other main method is through the piglin bartering system. Now when you're doing piglin bartering, there is a 2.18% chance to get 2 to 4 ender pearls from the piglins. You can see for instance right here with all these different piglins doing trades at the same time, we're able to get over a stack of the ender pearls. If you want a non-Enderman overworld method of getting the ender pearls, then trade with the cleric and level them up, because at their second highest level of expert, you can get 1 ender pearl for 5 emeralds. Although this is definitely not a very cheap trade, it's a fairly guaranteed way of getting the ender pearls, and of course when they restock you can buy even more of them if you want. And there's only one other place in the entire Minecraft world that you can get ender pearls from, and that last place is the altar chests inside of the stronghold. Now nowhere near every altar chest in the stronghold has the ender pearls, but there is a chance of them having an ender pearl, which can definitely be quite useful if you, let's say, ran out of ender pearls that you need. And so for instance, in this altar chest right here, we do have an ender pearl item, and so that's the only loot chest in the entire game that contains the ender pearls. But now that you know every place you can get them from, what is the use of the ender pearl? Well, the first thing that people will usually do when they get ender pearls is craft them into Eyes of Ender, as this item can be used to locate where the stronghold of the world is. The main use is that you throw it, and wherever that ender pearl lands, you will appear. But most people think that in the days of elytra travel and of course nether ice highways, there's not much of a point to use the ender pearl as a travel method anymore. However, there's still some really important reasons that you should probably always have ender pearls on you. The first thing that's really important to know is that if the ender pearl is thrown straight upwards, it goes about 30 blocks into the air if you're in Java Edition. However, inside of Bedrock Edition, it's much more. So if you throw the ender pearl straight up in Bedrock Edition, it'll actually go up approximately 45 blocks, which means it'll go about 50% higher, which is definitely not nothing. And also, although you can take damage when you land with it, it is still a really effective way of fast traveling, basically going from ender pearl throw to ender pearl throw. You just have to be aware because sometimes if you land on the cliff of something, you can fall down and die. Now something you might have noticed is that you take damage whenever you land with that ender pearl, and the exact number is 2.5 hearts of damage. Now I'm not sure exactly why you take damage when you teleport with the ender pearl, but it's always been like that in the game. However, the good news is that you can totally get rid of this 2.5 hearts of damage taken with the appropriate enchantments. That's right, not armor, but enchantments. So for instance right here, if I was going to throw this ender pearl with my full netherite armor on, I still took 2.5 hearts of damage right there. The full netherite armor does not protect me from that at all. So for instance, now let's put on a pair of protection 4 feather falling 4 boots and see how much damage we take. We took only half a heart of damage, and if we put on full protection 4 armor, with of course the feather falling 4 on those boots as well as protection 4, and we throw the ender pearl there, we also only take half a heart of damage. If we wear everything but those feather falling 4 boots, we will take a whole heart of damage, which more or less means that as long as you have a really good pair of feather falling 4 boots, there's no specific damage reduction advantage to having the full protection 4 armor on top of that in terms of the ender pearl's damage. Now one thing to be warned of though is the fact that there is a 1 in 20 chance, or only a 5% chance, of getting an Endermite when you are throwing around the Eyes of Ender, and so although 1 in 20 is fairly low, if you are throwing a lot of the ender pearls, you can eventually get one of these strange Endermite mobs to spawn into the world. And finally we have Endermites that spawned into the game. Now, the Endermite is this really strange little mob. It's one of the only mobs that's actually covered underneath the Bane of Arthropods enchantment. Really, its only unique purpose is the fact that the Endermen hate the Endermite. And so for instance right here, this Enderman just went after and killed those Endermites, and so Endermites can be used fairly effectively inside of some Enderman farms to anger those Endermen and have them go towards a certain direction that you want them to. But it is mostly just something to be aware of. If you happen to be seeing yourself taking damage, it might just be an Endermite that spawned at your feet. Now in terms of the uses, there is just the normal throw, like let's say looking forward and right clicking, and of course that will make you teleport wherever it lands. However, if you want to go the optimal distance and really make that be perfect, you want to throw it at 35 degrees. Now in Java Edition you can see 35 degrees on your F3 screen, but in Bedrock you'll have to sort of just estimate that. And so if we throw this at 35 degrees like right here, we will go the farthest we possibly can with a single throw, although that did end up landing us underwater. However, something really important to know is that your vertical velocity determines how far that ender pearl goes. So for instance, I'm going to throw an ender pearl normally, and then throw one as I'm jumping, and the one that I threw while I was jumping actually goes a little bit higher up there. And so let's say we're trying to go really far, we should go look at about 35 degrees and jump, and throw that ender pearl as we're jumping. And oftentimes being in a bubble column is one of the best ways of getting that vertical velocity. Now ender pearls do work through portals, but the way that they function depends on what kind of portal it is. So if you want to guarantee that an ender pearl for instance will work going through another portal, start by loading in the other dimension, by throwing in a couple items of something else, then as soon as you've thrown in one, throw in your ender pearl, that'll go through there, then when you go onto the other side we should appear somewhere that is not the base of the portal. We heard that ender pearl activate, and yes, here we are, nowhere near a portal. Well, it's right over there, but obviously the trajectory of the ender pearl made it go like that. Although it's important to do this when the portal is loaded on the other side, because if the portal is not loaded in on the other side, and we let's say throw this ender pearl through, what can happen is when we go through here, that ender pearl was just deleted and we simply end up at the base of the portal where we should be. Just be aware that if you're throwing them into the nether, what can sometimes happen is just like right here, where you actually land in the middle of lava, which is definitely not a good thing at all. If you're going through an end portal, the ender pearls work a bit differently depending on which type it is. So let's say right here, if we throw through an item and make sure it's loaded, then throw through one of these pearls, you'll see that we actually go over to the other side. And also on the return portal, the same thing is true. You can teleport through it with that ender pearl. However, without having to change things literally at all, you can 100% directly go through the end gateway portals with an ender pearl. And in fact, that's the method you're supposed to use if you're in Bedrock Edition. And so more or less you throw that, so you go right through it, and you'll notice we just appeared on the other end. And of course we can use this to go through this way also, and this would be the exact same case for the end gateways. However, you do have to be careful, because although throwing an ender pearl into the void isn't actually dangerous at all, if you do happen to throw an ender pearl on the side of an end island, then you can teleport to a place where you're just gonna fall down, and there's not actually any way of saving yourself from that point. Now ender pearls cannot be destroyed by lava, but they can certainly be set on fire, and so because of that you can actually do things that are really dangerous, like for instance teleport to the bottom of lava pools, like right here. When we throw that, we are now at the bottom of this lava pool and are definitely not going to escape. Alright, but enough of these fairly standard uses. What are the more complicated and more advanced uses of the ender pearl? Well, the first one is a double throw technique, where let's say we want to get to that chest here, then land here again. We'll kind of line up where we want this to fly, then right before that's going to land, we're going to throw the other pearl into the air, and then we can look in the chest, grab our extra ender pearls, and we're now going to teleport back exactly where we were standing before, so we can kind of have this really awesome way of traveling around. Now, a really fun but really difficult technique to do, which I'm just going to show in creative here because it is that hard, is to basically do a blasted throw. We're going to turn on hitboxes, throw the ender pearl, and then explode this right when it's overhead, which sometimes, if done correctly, will actually increase the velocity that it travels at. So for instance, just like that, you can see that ender pearl's velocity was clearly affected by the explosion. Although it does not actually help it that much, it can still be sort of a fun trick to use to try and go just a little bit further with your ender pearls, and can definitely give you some pretty crazy distance in certain throws. And you can just see how insanely high those are actually going. Now, as I was saying earlier, ender pearls are not definitely the best travel method, and so there's sort of alternative uses that actually make them be, in a sense, overpowered and really important to have items. So for instance, let's say we're walking and we land in lava by accident, we do not have enough time to get out, well we can use an ender pearl to get out, and now we can safely wait of course for that lava effect to go away, as we can then regenerate our health. But let's say we fell in without having these ender pearls, the amount of time it would take to get out by swimming is just going to be too much, even if we had decent armor. If you're ever in scenarios in Minecraft where falling off of an area would make you die, so for instance in the end, or maybe just on top of a tall mountain, it's really important to have those ender pearls, because let's say we fall off here, we can use one of the ender pearls to save us from what would have been a deadly fall. Even let's say right here we can turn around and throw that pearl and get into a safe position. Of course it doesn't always work, but can literally save you from dying inside the void if you do it right. Just be careful, as you could teleport onto a wall and still die. Another really important use of the ender pearl is to get out of super dangerous situations. You can actually use those ender pearls to not die from those creepers' explosions. Maybe you're fighting some other mobs and you just hear a creeper's hiss behind you. Throwing that ender pearl is what would 100% save your life in that situation, so you do not die from that creeper's blast. If you're falling from a deadly height, a much better way of surviving the fall is to throw an ender pearl. That is way better than, let's say, a water bucket, because water buckets not only are not effective on leaves anymore, but as well as that they're dependent on lag and also skill of right-clicking your water bucket placement perfectly, and so having an ender pearl to save you from super dangerous drops can actually be really important. And this really does make the ender pearl quite overpowered. All you want to do is once you get near to the bottom, then to throw the pearl, and generally it'll land before you do, which will save your life. And for instance, going both up and down super tall mountains is much easier if you have these ender pearls. Like for instance right here, not only is going up the mountain easier, but as well as that if we want to get down here without by accidentally taking a ton of fall damage, we can simply throw this at about a 35-degree angle and we should land completely safely, basically at the very bottom of the mountain, which we did. Also, you can actually use the ender pearls to go through walls somewhat. So for instance, you can kind of use it to go above the bedrock ceiling, although the easiest way is to simply place down a boat, with this being the final block of that ceiling. Get in the boat, you will start suffocating. Then you can throw one pearl, two pearls, and now you're out and you're on top of the roof. And this really does cement the ender pearls as being one of the most useful items in the entire game. However, there's two more main and really cool uses of the ender pearl that I haven't covered yet that I'm going to show you right now. And the first one is an ender pearl stasis chamber. Now we have the building supplies for this, and you can build this in the ground, or you can build it above the ground. We'll just build it above the ground for now. We basically want to make a 7-block tall tube, so that's 2 there, then 3. Now put a water bucket at the top, and place kelp from the bottom going all the way up to the top. Break the bottom block and replace that dirt block with a piece of soul sand. In fact, you can actually put the soul sand down first if you want, and then put the kelp on that, as kelp can grow on soul sand. Then simply put a block to the side, place down a trapdoor and flip that up, then we can break this block to the side. And of course, if you're building it up like this, we should probably build a staircase or a ladder that goes to the top. Although all that's really important in this design is the 7-block deep of the bubble column, and so you could incredibly easily just dig a 7-block deep tunnel anywhere you wanted. Anyway, once we've done this, we can then throw in an ender pearl like that. It'll go to the bottom and then just sort of float to the top. Some people worry about positioning it a lot, but as long as you're basically centered, it should be fine. And more or less what happens is that ender pearl stays there. Now this is known as an ender pearl stasis chamber, and it's most useful on multiplayer, because let's say I'm going out and doing something dangerous, I can sort of tell one of the people that I'm playing with that I need help. They can go over to the stasis chamber that's likely at my base, flip that trapdoor, and then I will actually teleport to where that is. And this works no matter where you are in the entire world. So let's say I was 30 million blocks out, and my friend used this, then I would actually effectively come back up here. I would suggest also putting a chest nearby and putting your extra ender pearls there. Now you can always upgrade this design with, let's say, having redstone line going to here, or by maybe having multiple of these stasis chambers that are all loaded. But one of the coolest ways of sort of turning a stasis chamber into a super fun build is the last build I'm going to show you can do with the ender pearls, and that is an ender pearl stasis cannon. Now to build this, we're going to want 8 kelp, 4 trapdoors, trapdoors, a chest, a button, a piece of soul sand, as many ender pearls as you can get, as many TNT as you can get, and 9 TNT and 1 ender pearl are used every time this is used. You also want 2 buckets of water, 7 ladders, 9 dispensers, 11 redstone dust, and about 35 planks or some other building block. Start by placing down a piece of soul sand in the ground, and then building up with these planks to be 7 blocks tall. Place down your water there, go to the bottom, and simply place down that kelp in the tube. You'll notice we actually have 1 extra kelp. And that's because you can make it by having one of these be taller and place water there, and then you can make the kelp go to the top, but of course the water will go over and flow over everything, so if you don't want that, you don't have to make it that way. What I'll show is the method right here. We're going to place oak trapdoors on these 3 angles. Now the direction that the ender pearls are going to fly is the opposite to where this block is, so they're going to go this direction, and we're going to place a water bucket right here. We're also going to get our chest, we're going to break this, and we're going to replace this block with a chest, so just like that. We're going to grab these planks, put one on either side of the chest, just like this, and basically make there be sort of a tube out of these oak planks. And we're going to place a dispenser on this side and on this side, then just elongate these to go on either side like this. And after we place one of the dispensers back here, we're going to harvest these 2 planks at the back again. And that's because the shape should be something like this. Then we're going to take our second water bucket and we're going to place it here. We should also pick up the water here, and you may have to reuse the kelp to turn everything into a water source again, or you can use one of the ladders to do it like that. Now that they're all water sources, we're going to go down and break all the kelp again, and then come to the top, place a water block right here, and we're going to grab our final trapdoor, and then get a trapdoor and place it off of the side of that temporary block. We can now break the temporary block, and this is now working exactly how we want it to. Simply take all of your TNT and divide it equally among all the dispensers. And of course, the more TNT you have, the less you're going to have to refill it, but it's up to you. Now put redstone dust all along the edge here. We want to place the button on this edge right there. We're going to want to put all of our ender pearls inside of this chest, and have our ladder going off of the side of this so we can easily go up the ender pearl cannon. Just grab an ender pearl out of the chest, crouch, and kind of get trapped underneath here. Then you can perfectly center this in the middle here. You can turn on your F3 if you want to get this to be around 0.500, 0.500, or the middle of this block, and the coordinates to be sort of like around 90 degrees. So right here it's negative 180. It's whatever you want, but it's not that important. We can get that to be centered there. Then we'll press this button. That'll make the TNT go off. We're of course going to hide down here, but that ender pearl is launched off as you kind of saw there. And this is the point where these launchers become just a little bit more for fun and not so much to be practical, is that generally even a really small launcher like this is powerful enough to get that ender pearl to be out of range of your render. So for instance right here we actually have to travel in the direction that it was fired to have it teleport us there. The good news is that let's say you're on a multiplayer world and the area you're in is all loaded in, maybe by the spawn chunks or by other players, you're good. But if that's not the case, then it is mostly just a for fun thing, as you're gonna have to go over there. I've gotten distances anywhere between 400 to 800 blocks here, and we just landed, and I'll mark out our coordinates here and see how far we went. And it looks like with that we went over 600 blocks. If you want to have some real fun, you can actually stand on top of this trapdoor here, and then throw your pearls down from there, and we're going to load this full of as many pearls as we possibly can. And now we're about to have over 64 ender pearls be inside of this cannon design, which is absolutely crazy just looking at it how many pearls are there. Let's go up here, launch the cannon, and see the incredibly crazy radius of where all these go. So we'll press the button here. We may as well have it launch a couple times just for fun. And you just saw an insane amount of pearls there go that direction. We should see ourselves start to teleport every single direction very randomly, and oh my goodness, yes, there we go. It's completely crazy when that happens. And if we go further, yeah, it starts again. It's just absolutely craziness. I'm not sure if even all those fit on each frame. That's everything about ender pearls in Minecraft. I hope you enjoyed.